Hey guys, it's Yuta. So today I'm going to be reacting to my own video, Do Foreigners in Japan Speak Japanese? Because I've always wanted to comment on this video because there's a lot to talk about. So let's get started. So I wrote foreigners in the title because I didn't have a lot of space. But what I meant was Western looking people, and I wanted to specify that because I don't like the fact that when they talk about foreigner in Japan, they tend to forget Asian people because the biggest foreign group of Japan is actually Chinese people. But the thing is, it's very difficult to tell if somebody is Chinese or Japanese because we can look pretty similar. So that's why we wanted to approach predominantly Western people here. すいません、ちょっといいですか？ちょっと今千葉にいる人の出身を調べてるんですけど、どこから来たか教えてもらってもいいですか？
厚木です。はい、米軍基地。
ああ、じゃあアメリカ人。
はい、ハーフ。
なるほどなるほど。ありがとうございます。
はい、どうも。See you later.
So something about him made me think that maybe he grew up going to international school or American school. Like you can observe the way he carries himself and the way he speaks Japanese. Of course, his Japanese is good, but yeah, maybe you can hear a little bit of influence of English or something like that. And we are going to see another mixed race Japanese people later, and we will come back to this point again. 今ちょっと YouTube のビデオで
What did she say?
She said I didn't speak Japanese in Japanese. Yeah, it's always interesting when people say that I don't speak Japanese in Japanese. But come to think about it, I sometimes do that in another language. But in this case, I think it could be because she just didn't want to talk to us. It could be just an excuse. Or maybe she remembers that phrase because people always talk to her in Japanese.
日本語できますか?
Don't understand.
Do you speak Japanese?
No.
So you can see that they are very likely to be tourists because of how they are. It's a rather big group of non-Asian people just hanging out outside like that. So local people would probably be just walking, and I think it's close to a smoking area in Shibuya. So people who work in Shibuya might just take a break and smoke a cigarette over there. So they kind of stand out, and in a way, in a non-local way. So often you can just tell by looking at people if they are tourists or not. Of course, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but there's a good chance that they are tourists. Does anybody speak Japanese here?
No. Okay, thank you.
すみません、日本語喋るができる?
私は日本語喋れます。
So this kind of couple where one is Japanese and the other one is not Japanese, I think there's a good chance that the other one speaks a little bit of, at least a little bit of Japanese. And there's also a good chance that they live in Japan.
この人は喋れません。
But I was wrong about that. He didn't speak Japanese. But maybe it's possible that maybe he doesn't live in Japan or they don't live in Japan and they are just visiting. すいません、日本語喋れます?
No Japanese.
Okay. Yes, so this is another example where that they are very likely to be tourists. It's kind of rare to see Western couples like them in Japan. You can also see how they are dressed. It's very likely that they don't buy their clothes in Japan. Each country has their own preferred clothes. If you start living in a foreign country and buy your clothes locally, you're going to blend in. And also, when it comes to Western people who come and live in Japan, statistically speaking, there's a good chance that they are youngish people in their 20s and they come here alone and they may teach English, or maybe they work for a Japanese company and they find a Japanese boyfriend or girlfriend. Many of my Western friends are like that, and many Western people who live in Japan that I see are also like that. すいません。はい。今ちょっと知り合いで。はい。So you can see this is a guy in his business suit, just walking straight. So he seems to know where he's going. So there's a very good chance that he actually lives here, and thus he speaks Japanese. みんなが出身地を聞いてもらってるんですけど、
私はパキスタン人です。 日本とかパキスタンとか本当に一番友達だよね。
Yeah, so he was one of the few Asian people we approached. And since he's South Asian, maybe it's more likely that he's a foreigner. Although I've seen Japanese people of South Asian origin who were born and raised in Japan. So yeah, it's not going to be 100%, but statistically speaking. どのくらい日本語は喋れますか？
少し。
Yeah, so she speaks a little bit of Japanese, and you can see that she's with her Japanese friend. And if you see Western people who are with Japanese people, there's a good chance either they live in Japan or they have some connection. They might not be just a typical tourist who just randomly come to Japan because it's one of the popular destinations. There's a good chance that they are actually interested in Japan.
We actually used to work together in a Japanese grocery store in the Chicagoland area. So he left about 5 years ago, and I haven't seen him since. So finally, we're reunited.
Yeah, so she has some connection to Japan. She used to work in a Japanese grocery store. Is that what she said? But yeah, she's not just a typical random tourist.
すみません、今渋谷で出身地をちょっと
オーストリアです。ウィーンです。
So this is an interesting example that doesn't fit our usual model because it's a Western family, but the dad speaks Japanese. So I forgot why. Maybe they live in Japan or something, or maybe their dad likes Japan. I forgot.
すみません。
はい。
I
日本
remember
語喋
him.
りますか？
喋れます。
Remember him. Again, a guy in his business suit, walking alone. So it's very likely, and he was walking straight, so he was going somewhere, he knew where he was going to.
English or Japanese? Or in Italian maybe? Can you speak Italian? No?
posso parlare italiano.
Ah, tu parli italiano?
Non so parlare italiano.
Italiano, bene.
Non so parlare.
Ah, non sai parlare. そしたらですね、日本語を覚えたいならですね、先に自分の言語で詳しく文法を勉強するべきだと思います。いきなり日本語を習うのはですね、日常会話ぐらいなら話せるかもしれませんけど、厳密に詳しく自分の考えていることを言いたければですね、やっぱり文法が一番大事なことだと思いますね。
So adults can actually learn languages faster than kids because we already speak another language. So we can use that language to learn other languages faster. And grammar is like a shortcut. So if you want to learn basic Japanese grammar, I can teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak. So click the link in the description and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta.
すみません。
Oh, sorry, I can't speak Japanese.
I speak English.
Oh, do you?
We are
I like the way she said, oh, do you?
日本語喋りますか？
I don't speak Japanese.
We're trying to see if American-looking people will talk to me in Japanese.
Okay. Am I American looking?
Yeah, because like your eyes are like bigger.
It's funny, Jack. So if somebody doesn't look Japanese, they must be American.
Yeah.
Although
So his dad was the camera person, and he was teaching his son like how things are. Just because somebody doesn't look Japanese, it doesn't mean they're American. And interestingly, many people thought that he was my kid, but just think about it. Jack is very white and I'm Asian. So even if I had a kid with a white woman, I don't think our kids would look as white as Jack. But yeah, people just make assumptions. Interesting. And every time I have a female guest on my channel, they always assume that we are dating. But it's just how people are, I guess.
interestingly, somebody could look very Japanese and still be American.
You
Yeah.
can talk to that girl.
Oh.
That was so cute, right? A little girl appeared and Jack was, oh, cute moment.
じゃあどこから来ましたか？
デンマーク。
I have a friend from Denmark.
You have?
Whose name is Paul.
So that was another example that defies our expectations because there are a group of Western people, but they speak Japanese. So we can make assumptions based on maybe statistics, but it's not 100% accurate. So it's always good to check because, yeah, our assumptions can be wrong.
His name is Paula.
Yeah.
He also has blonde hair.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that happens. Jack started talking about this random Danish girl that he knew, and the women were like, they were being polite, right? They were like, yeah, you know, we don't care about that person, but we just try to listen to you. And that also happens to me. If I go to another country and say I'm Japanese, they sometimes start talking about random Japanese people that they know, but like to me they are just complete strangers and they're Japanese, so there's nothing special about being Japanese because I'm Japanese and I've seen plenty of Japanese people. And I'm pretty sure this will happen to you if you go to a different country.
なるほど。
出身を教えてもらっていいですか？
私は日本とイギリスのハーフなんですよ。生まれも育ちも日本なんですけど、
Another
はい、
mixed
出身
person.
クルジア人。
So she's from Georgia. Georgia is a small country kind of between Europe and Middle East. And I've been there and they have nice food. They have this dumpling thingy called hinkari, which is delicious. And they have good wine, cheap and good.
日本語はどうですか？
下手です。
But she does speak a little bit of Japanese because she's with a Japanese person. I mean, not because, but if somebody is with a Japanese person, it's more likely that they speak a little bit of Japanese or they have enough interest in Japan to make Japanese friends. Or maybe they got interested in Japan because of their Japanese friends.
日本語喋りますか？
日本語話せますよ。
どこからですか？
俺ここで東京で生ま
Yes,
れてるんで。
Farouk.
ハーフ。
So here's the thing. Did you notice that it was Jack who approached him? I didn't approach him because, okay, I was actively looking for somebody who looks foreign. But the thing is, he didn't look foreign, so I didn't even register him as a foreigner. The way he walks, the way he talks, his facial expressions, like everything about him is Japanese, except that he's mixed. But his kind of like a Japanese-ness is showing, and you can actually see his facial expression here. He has I think his face also has a lot of kind of like Asian Japanese features.
日本語話せますよ。
どこからですか？
俺
Again, like as soon as he turned around and replied, I immediately knew that he was Japanese. And there's nothing foreign about the way he is. We've met other mixed race Japanese people on that day, but with the other ones, I thought they spoke other languages. And even though they speak Japanese as their first language, something about them tells me that it might not be their primary language, right? So maybe they spend more time speaking other languages in their cases because the one was half American and the other one was half British. So maybe they spend more time speaking English. Maybe they went to international school. I think the next guy actually went to international school. I think that's what he said. And even if you're bilingual or multilingual, it's not always the case that you spend an equal amount of time speaking all the languages. Usually you end up speaking one language more than other languages. But with Farouk, this guy, I could tell that Japanese was his primary language. Actually, he doesn't speak any other languages. So he grew up in Japan only speaking Japanese, just like me. And I could totally tell that.
すいません、今渋谷にいる人に出身はどこか聞いてるんですけど、出身をしてもらえませんか？
At this point, I definitely knew that they didn't speak Japanese, but it was kind of interesting to just keep talking to them in Japanese and see their reaction. And yeah, like they were having fun as well. Like, you know, they were also amused. So yeah, it was interesting.
出身を教えてもらえたりしませんか？
フランスです。
あ、フランス。
So another couple where one is Japanese and the other one is Western. So it's quite likely that she speaks Japanese.
どちらですか？
札幌です。
43年。
Oh, that's a long time.
ありがとうございます。すいません。出身を教えてもらえたりしないですか？
English?
I just like the way she said English.
We're actually trying this social experiment.
Oh,
trying
I
to speak
love it.
Western-looking people and see how many people will speak Japanese.
Oh.
That's why I spoke
Sorry.
Japanese.
She was like, thank God he speaks English.
Watashi wa. How old are you?
10.
10. And do you go to school here?
Yes.
Do you like it?
Not that much because I go to a local Japanese school and the school lunches,
I love the fact that kids are sometimes super honest.
I have to like eat them all, but I don't really like Japanese food.
You don't like Japanese food?
that's
yeah.
no
good.
Oh, it was nice talking to you.
Yeah, that's
Good luck with your social experiment.
Thanks.
We talked to a lot of Australian people on that day and they're very friendly.
出身を教えてもらえたりしませんか？
はい。じゃあフランスです。
Again, a young guy who blended in quite well. He didn't dress super foreign, I guess. And yeah, sometimes he looked like he would be somebody who would be interested in Japan and who wants to live in Japan, which he does.
まあ私は観光客ではないけど大丈夫。
ありがとうございます。
There's another guy, Jackie.
すみません。日本語喋りますか？
喋ります。
どこからです
I
か？
remember them.
America.
Do you see that she was translating? That was interesting.
What is your favorite Japanese food?
Tamago.
That's my favorite answer of the day. Eggs. Yeah, of course, eggs are totally Japanese.
私は卵好きで
It's
す。
not even Japanese food. Everywhere. 卵のどんなところが好きですか？
Like, what part do you like?
It's okay, you don't have to translate.
Yeah, so she was translating, and I was like, yeah, if I wanted to be understood, I could have just spoken English. Why are you translating? I wanted to see how much Japanese he speaks. But I think she was doing that out of habit. But I could see how the situation can be confusing because I'm Japanese, Jack is American, Jack's dad is American, but we are speaking Japanese, even though we can also speak English, even though the other person might not speak Japanese very well. So yeah, it was a very random situation.
Let him try. 卵のどんなところが好きですか？
Okashi. I don't know. I like
They were so friendly. It was so friendly. I love it.
I like all of the eggs.
What's the difference between Japanese eggs and American eggs?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
They're the same.
Actually, some people commented saying that Japanese eggs do taste good. But come to think about it, maybe I think Japanese eggs on the tasty side of the egg spectrum, because I've tried eggs in other countries and it is true that in some countries it's kind of hard to find good eggs. Some of the eggs I tried, they tasted kind of like a sourish, and sometimes their shells are very fragile. So if you try to make like boiled eggs, sometimes the shells break and that's kind of annoying. But I've had bad eggs in other countries. So I think maybe because we eat eggs raw in Japan, and when you do that, it's better to use a good quality egg because otherwise it just doesn't taste good. You can't mask the bad taste by cooking.
Have a good day, okay? Hi.
Bye. So that was a fun experiment, and maybe I will do this again sometime in the future, and maybe I will talk to you. And if you want to reply in perfect Japanese, I can teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people actually speak today, because it can be different from the kind of Japanese that textbooks teach you, because textbooks can be unnatural and old-fashioned. So click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta. Alright, see you guys soon. Ciao, ciao!